Chapter 32 A Gift. The James R. Thompson Center was originally the State of Illinois Center until it got too expensive for the Illinois state government to inhabit it, and they sold the building to Google. Finley stated as he stood by Declan's elbow. How the mighty have fallen. I don't even think Google had a chance to take it over before the war. His best friend was not telling him about the post-modernist Rotunda building, whose whole aspect looked like what somebody in the past thought the future would look like. Finley was reminding himself. Declan understood why. With its round base and steep glass walls that rose up like a sheer ice cliff before them, Declan could almost remember what it had been like when the streets were full of people, and there'd be tourists coming in and out of this building, eating in the food court in the lower area, or heading to one of the L trains, which Chicago termed its elevated and subway lines. The memory of the buzz of life was all it was. The ruins were silent and dark now, more like a monument to the dead than the living. It's fared a little better against the plant life, Declan remarked. Walls are too steep for them to get a foothold. The vines that thrust up through the asphalt and concrete sidewalks and roads did hang down like a beaded curtain around the first level of the Thompson Center, but the upper floors, which were simply walls of glass, were mostly clear. Surprisingly, many of the panes were still intact too, but Declan supposed they were of incredibly sturdy glass. They had been walls of the former state building after all. What is Google? Elisha asked as she dusted her hands off on her thighs. Oh, it was. Here, Finley gave a sigh. It was a technology company, an information technology company at its core. Its search engine was known to. He broke off when he saw her furrowed brow. Basically, it was a librarian in a way. It helped you find answers to questions, brought information to your fingertips, let you explore many subjects. You could get lost down plenty of rabbit holes with Google. Oh, well, that's quite useful, she answered. Yeah, it was very useful, Finley nodded. Did it have as many sources as the Athenaeum? She asked. You might not believe this, but it had far more, Finley explained. All of human knowledge could be accessed through something called the internet, and Google, among other things it did, allowed you to search that information efficiently. You could learn anything, find out anything. It was incredible. Elisha looked a little dubious, but said neutrally, well, I can understand why you would miss such a thing. Like your Ridwin, we could contact people all over the globe immediately and search all that information with our phones. Finley moved his thumb over his palm as if he was his old iPhone. Declan could feel the silky smooth glass under his own just watching that movement. Elisha couldn't hide her disbelief there. That sounds quite wondrous. It was. And we should be working to bring it back. Power it by magic instead of fossil fuels, of course. Finley balled his right hand into a fist. The separatists can seem ridiculous, can be ridiculous. But trust me when I say that there were some things about the old world worth saving. That was even better than what we have today. She shifted from foot to foot. Kara, she's a human friend of mine, says some of the same things. I admit that when she speaks of certain activities like flying in the air and such, I do have a feeling of wonder. Maybe it's something to build a bridge over, Finley said, instead of just saying that everything human is bad and has to be eliminated. I don't think that, Elisha cried, but there was a slightly guilty light in her eyes. Maybe not. I guess I've just not heard anything from any elves about what they'd like to preserve. It's all about reclaiming, though I don't think there's much worth keeping around here. Finley turned back towards the broken doors that were hanging off their frames, as if people had simply smashed through them in their panic to escape the Leviathan. Maybe they had. While the first rifts had opened in Lightwell, Declan imagined that the Pedway, or any underground area really, would have suited the Leviathan quite well in terms of their rifts. While they were not fond of electric light, or any light really, that light did not hurt them in the same way that sunlight did. It was thought that many of the rifts opened in people's basements. The subway system here must have been an incredible place for rifts. We should go in, Finley. Where is the entrance to this pedway? Aquilin asked. Downstairs. The interior is fully open with offices and stuff all along the outside, but there was a food court at the bottom and 3 entrances to the pedway from there. Are you certain that the horses and HT will be safe up here on their own? Finley asked a little anxiously as he saw the sun had dipped far enough in the sky that the shadows were growing longer in the streets. The horses and Helgrim's pony were swishing their tails and touching each other's noses. Aquilin smiled. Yes, I have strengthened all the enchantments over them. Nothing shall hurt them, and they will know to run back to Tyrell if anything is to go wrong. Horses scared of dark, Snaglak chuckled. Not make war like Glom. Glom kill good. Horses have a hard time using stairs, Snaglak, Finley reminded the orc. And they aren't meant to kill things. They're meant to be ridden. Glom meant to be ridden and kill things. Snaglak nodded sagely, even as Glom attempted to take a bite out of his butt. Hey, no eat! Snaglak smacked the Naki on the head. It didn't hurt the great beast, just reminded him who was, supposedly, boss. Oh, I guess you don't smell funny then, Raelif asked dryly, sensing that he was missing something when Finley snickered and shook his head while saying, You really can't get over the fact that Snaglak doesn't want to eat you, as if that's a bad thing. As I'm sure that any intelligent creature knows, I am delicious. So yes, I am offended, Raelif proclaimed. Stringy, Snaglak muttered under his breath. I'll tell you what, Raelif, I'll slice the meat off your bones myself and cook it for Snaglak. Next time we're in the inn, Helgrim promised. Well, maybe we don't have to go that far. Raelif looked at the dwarf askance. I'm stating a fact that everyone knows without actually taking a mouthful. I don't know, you're starting to make me feel a little peckish too, Helgrim chuckled. Everyone laughed, but Declan saw that Aquilin's smile was faint as he regarded the others. He imagined that under other circumstances the Sun King would have been chuckling just as loudly, but Aquilin's mood had become darker and darker since he'd heard about the potential rifts to Illithor. The tension had risen in the Sun King's strong shoulders to the point where Declan imagined if he'd touched Aquilin, it would have been like touching stone. Of course he's feeling worried, the voice supplied. The voice had been surprisingly quiet on the way here. Well, not quiet. He had been humming a little tune, but had said little. The humming was actually quite tuneful and a little sad. Why? Declan asked. Did you not hear Helgrim? An Arve in a Kindred city, attempting to loot its magics, the voice tutted. Yeah, but Darkassin is only going there because he wants to keep people safe against the Leviathan, Declan reminded the voice. He thinks the Leviathan are massing in the Underdark, readying a huge attack, and he believes that there are weapons in Illithor that can defeat them. Oh, there most certainly are, the voice agreed. You know this? More and more, Declan was certain that the voice was a man. No, not a man, an elf. A night elf, to be exact. He did not sound like Volray, and he had expressed the desire to kill the other Kindreth, but he was almost certain he was a night elf. He definitely could not be Lady Ashran Zinzadoral, as he was clearly a he and she was a she, or rather they presented as such. Besides, he would know her presence immediately, and this person was nothing like her. Not exactly. Everyone knows this. Look at Raelif, the voice chuckled. He's practically moaning with desire and dread to get there. Declan's eyes shifted to Raelif, and he saw that the voice was correct. There was only the thinnest veneer of insouciance that the elf normally cloaked himself with, thin and cracking. When people weren't looking directly at Raelif, his expression was taut, and Declan didn't think it was because he was afraid of what the separatist woman had said, that no one returned alive from the pedway. But Aquilin is no thief. Unlike Darkassin and Raelif, he would never dream of taking anything from Purple Tower to Illithor. The voice waxed poetic. Its maze-like streets, where one could find a shop containing the rarest of scrolls, or a knife against one's throat. Oh, the domes of its temples where pot-bellied forgotten gods feasted on the blood of innocents, their screams rising up in the distance, only to end in groans of pleasure-pain. And then there were those dens of iniquity where anything and everything was for sale. You sound like you've been there, Declan replied dryly. Been there? The voice chuckled. Oh, yes, you could say that. So, if Darkassan finds a rift there, will the Night King know? Declan asked. Yes, Declan. The Night King will know. The voice answered softly, almost slyly. He will most definitely know. And what will happen? Declan's hands fisted at his sides. To Darkassan. To everyone, Declan clarified. Aquilin is clearly worried that Darkassan going there and stealing, don't forget the stealing part. He doesn't just intend to sightsee, the voice reminded him. Borrowing things the Night King just left behind will cause problems between the Arve and Kindreth, Declan pointed out. Do you think that's true? Well, how would you deal with a thief who broke into your home and took your most precious things? The voice wheedled. Precious? He left them behind for who knows how long, so clearly he's not using them, Declan pointed out. They're his. The voice's tone became hard and dark. No one has the right to take them without permission. Do they? I hardly think the Night King is around to ask, Declan continued. They shouldn't be left to rot when people are in need. Oh, you say that now. But imagine if Darkassan took Krith from you. Would you still feel the same? The voice pressed. A possessive stab went through Declan, and he found himself pressing a hand over the tattoo of the knife. He couldn't take it. It's a part of me. Everything in Ilithor is a part of the Night King, just the same as Krith is a part of you, the voice told him. Keep that in mind. The others were starting to organize themselves as to who would lead, who would follow, and who would bring up the rear. Finley, of course, was to stay in the middle, with Helgrim, Snaglak, and Glom guarding their back. We'll not let anything slip up on us. Helgrim had a wicked-looking two-handed hammer with him that he passed from hand to hand as if it weighed nothing at all. The metal had a dark cast to it, and there was elaborate leather stitching around the haft. Glom bit the air. Snaglak, who had a simple club that was run through with spikes, chuckled. We'll have lots of fangs to turn into the Separatists after tonight. I've no doubt you'll handle them all, Finley said with a smile. I feel quite safe with everyone taking care of me. I'll take point, Declan announced without waiting to see if anyone objected. He was certain that the elves likely would. He understood why. They thought him quite as helpless as other humans, except he wasn't helpless, and he wasn't human. He had just accepted these things now. He walked silently through the broken metal doors that were practically twisted out of joint into the silent interior of the Thompson Center. Declan remembered being impressed with the inside of this building once upon a time. The sheer vastness of the space was amazing. One could look up from the bottom all the way to the top. Offices and other businesses ringed the outside of the building, as Finley had said. But there was also a segment of windows that had allowed light to pour inside to add to the artificial lights that had lit up the space. Now, there were no electric lights, and the afternoon was far advanced. The interior was draped in a dusty twilight. Vines crawled up the giant elevator banks that were exposed so that, in the past, people could ride up and down while seeing out. The red metal crossbeams that had given the building its unique look were dull and appeared like ancient blood where they weren't obscured by more vines. Declan silently crossed to the balcony railing that overlooked the food court that comprised the lowest level of the building. It, too, was open to the air. The plastic tables and chairs were still there, never going to rot, but they were festooned with greenery and dust. Many of the seating areas looked to have been turned over, as if a giant had walked through in a rage and upended tables and sent chairs flying. Again, like the doors of the building, Declan wondered if the humans had done this in a desperate attempt to get away from the killer shadows. If he'd had any doubt that the Leviathan were still there, he was soon disabused of that notion, for there were cleared pathways between the stairs up to the first floor and the food court, where the plants were blackened and shriveled, drained of life. These paths led through arched hallways that went deeper underground. The Leviathan used this place regularly, Declan whispered to Aquilin, who had joined him. He pointed with Krith, Broken Fang, his mother's kitchen knife, towards the desiccated plants. It had, of course, appeared in his hand unbidden. Aquilin nodded. And it looks like not just them. I see footmarks. It was Declan's turn to nod. He saw a few faint footprints in the dust leading down into the depths. Elven boot prints. Darkassin had come this way, and not all that long ago, as the Leviathan prince had left them untouched. Raelif, can you do the location spell, please? Aquilin asked the other elf. Already on it, Raelif stated. His eyes glowed a hot red for a moment as he held the necklace that Elisha had given him in both hands. He caught Aquilin frowning slightly when he saw that color, as if it shouldn't have been. But it wasn't suspicion of Raelif, Declan thought, but more concern for the other elf's health. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just the closer he feels he is getting to Illithor, the more the Kindrith in him is coming out, the voice whispered. Do you know where Darkassin is? Declan demanded suddenly. Not with me. The voice answered, then added, Not yet, anyways. Keep going down, Ravin. Your blood will lead you too. This way, Raelif said as he surged towards the stairs that led down to the food court. They followed after him, making little more sound than the wind. Even Finley was stepping lightly. A glance back showed him that Finley's shoes were glowing slightly. Raelif put some kind of spell on him to make him as silent as us, Declan realized, and felt a wave of gratefulness to the elf. The Adiva that Raelif had given him was now the temperature of the air, neither cool nor warm, as it no longer had to protect him from the sun. But he knew nothing but relief to feel it against the skin of his chest. There was a light hand on his shoulder as Aquilin wordlessly indicated several broken metal pipes near the end of the steps. He nodded and carefully picked his way over them. He half had an idea that Aquilin wanted to sweep him up and carry him over them bride style, but he needed no such help. Still, the caring was there, and Declan felt its warmth inside of him like a fire. The Night King cannot blame Aquilin for anything that Darkassin does, Declan argued with the voice as they padded through the path that Leviathan had made into the pedway. You seem quite passionate about this, Ravin, the voice chuckled. I don't want. Here Declan chewed his inner cheek as they approached the darkened hallway of the entrance to the pedway. There was no light down here. Soon the grayish, dusty illumination from the Thompson Center would fade. He could see perfectly well, but Finley could not. But he was pretty sure that Raelif had likely done something about that as well, as his best friend walked nimbly behind them, avoiding all obstacles no matter how small. What don't you want? The voice prodded. Aquilin doesn't deserve any blame, Declan cried. Yes, but he is the Sun King, so he is responsible for all his people too. The voice sounded sympathetic but unimpressed. He's trying to stop Darkassin, Declan pointed out. Doesn't that count for something? Of course it does, but will it be enough? To disturb sacred Illithor after all this time? The Leviathan are already doing that if they are running rifts out of it, Declan said firmly. Wouldn't the Night King be glad if we eliminated them from his city? Eliminated? Is that what you plan to do? Eliminate all the Leviathan there? The voice pressed, sounding interested. I thought you were just going to rescue poor Darkassin from his ambitions. We are, but... Declan stopped because he suddenly felt a prickling of the hair on the back of his neck and on his arms. He reached for both Aquilin and Raelif, grasping one shoulder each and pulling them back. Both elves turned with quizzical looks on their faces at him, but then they heard it. The dry, slithering sound of scales moving against one another. Declan felt his heart seize, then beat twice the speed. His mouth flooded with the bitter taste of adrenaline. A fight was coming. But more than that, this felt meant as if he was meant to be here, meant to be doing this, as if he were stepping finally onto a pathway that had been waiting for him all along. Aquilin brought up his right hand, which held a glowing golden stone, a bit of sunshine in the dark. But Declan closed his hand over it and curled Aquilin's fingers against the stone's slick surface. He shook his head and instead gestured to himself and made a creeping motion with his fingers, indicating that he would go ahead and scout. Aquilin shook his head, but Declan squeezed his hand again, and the shaking stopped. Aquilin's eyes, like luminous blue pools in the darkness, studied his face. "Trust me. Believe in me. All will be well." Declan thought so hard that he felt as if the words should have taken physical form in the air between them. And then he was moving, cutting through the darkness like the prow of an icebreaker through Arctic waves. Krith was out, held down against his right leg. The hilt felt warm in his hand. He wanted to see what they were facing before anyone struck, including himself. "Knowledge is power," the voice agreed. Declan crept ahead to where the tunnel turned to the right. He cast one glance back and saw Raelif holding onto Aquilin, as the Sun King clearly wanted to go after him. But Raelif held him firm, even as Aquilin appeared anguished. Alasha, who was near Finley, appeared completely confused that he had gone ahead, even though she was still thought of him an elf. "If you were trying to pretend to be human, do you really think this was a good idea?" the voice asked. "But then again, you're seeing perfectly well in the dark with those sunglasses on, Ravin. Ravin, you're breaking all your precious rules already about keeping your head down and, I know, but I have to do it," he admitted. He could never allow Aquilin or any of his friends to head into the darkness first. He couldn't do it. He just couldn't. He had to protect the Sun King and everyone else who was in his heart. And he felt that this was one of those times that only he could do that, though he had no objective reasons to think that. "Yes, I know," the voice whispered. He reached the corner and pressed his back up against it. He could feel their chill even through his long black jacket. He slowly looked around the corner. His heart fell. There wasn't one Leviathan coiling there. There weren't even a dozen. The next hallway was so thick with them as to be more coils than floor, walls, or ceiling that could be seen. "If Aquilin had used his magic, it would have disturbed this whole nest," the voice murmured. "Nasty. You're going to have to do this quick and quiet, Ravin, but I don't think Krith is up to the job." "It has to be. It's all I have," Declan reminded him as he rose up on the balls of his feet. "No, actually, it isn't," the voice murmured. "You see, I've left you something. Right there." Declan's gaze was drawn to the opposite wall of the pedway. A longsword was leaning against the wall. It was made of dark metal, almost black matte, and had a single red stone set in the vicious hilt. "Meet sorrow's end," the voice said. "A gift. For you, Ravin. For you." If you want to read as well as listen to The Night Prince, you have two options. Number one is to join my subscription site, wraithrain.com, and read up to the most recent chapter I've written, so more than 100 chapters ahead of this podcast. And remember, you also get to comment. The other option is to buy the books. We release a book every 3 months because that's the speed that my amazing cover artist can produce the beautiful artwork, and we gotta have that. Book one is actually free to get you started. I'll post the links in the notes.